Yeah, I think that's an actual film noir film. Do you have to say film after film noir? I don't think you do.
Do you say it after or before?
I think you would say a noir film.
That's Brooks Strause, everybody. We're having an interview with him. Okay, let's do it.
All right. You want me to do the whole greetings, citizens of Earth?
You've already started.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Erik.
Welcome to Accelerativ Thrust, where we discuss and review underground, experimental, and extreme music. And we also interview Brooks Strause.
Yes. So, welcome, listeners, and welcome, Brooks.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. Welcome to you guys, too.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Brooks, for welcoming us to you.
Wow.
And coming over to Erik's house and watching me through video and watching us glitch. Yeah, we had a glitch experience just recently.
A glitch experience, it's called.
Glitch experience.
Yes. Wow. We've already entered the realm of bullshit.
Well, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Awesome.
The realm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, do you want me to sort of talk about Brooks, or do you like kind of an intro, or does Brooks want to do his own?
Hey.
All right. So I'll give my perspective. Okay. Brooks Strause is a singer, songwriter, been in the game. That's what we call it here, in the game, for a long time. Mm-hmm. From Muscatine, Iowa originally, has lived various places, but has been in Iowa City for a long time. He's been in a lot of bands, which we'll get into probably more in depth, but mostly at this point, I think sort of a solo thing, right? But yeah, a few current projects going now. Anyway, none of this matters. He's Brooks Strause. He's an amazing songwriter and musician and singer, and he's with us now. So,
well, would you like me to give my perspective on Brooks Strause?
Sure.
So my perspective on Brooks Strause is he's everything literally that you just said, Erik, but he's also a childhood friend of mine.
Oh.
From, I don't know, when did we meet? Like sixth grade or something, Brooks?
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
Somewhere around there. It was like
some point in middle school.
Nice.
Yep. So that's my perspective on Brooks Strause.
Oh, and comic book artist.
Comic book artist, yes, absolutely. And just overall a creative.
Oh, that's what the kids call being an artist now, right? Being
they call
creative.
Them creatives. Yes.
Yeah. Dan, do you want to ask a question first, or you want me to ask Brooks a question first?
Well, sure. Actually, this is a question that I didn't write down that I just thought of. And since we didn't really talk about our bullshit during the intro like we usually do, Erik, this is just a question that I have about actually just modern day music. We'll start it off now. And I'll just ask this question to Brooks, and then we can all answer this, I guess, and have a conversation. So, do you guys think that albums are dead, or is that just bullshit?
Oh, good one. What do you think, B?
I mean, I think it's irrelevant. I think that a lot of young people or people living a certain kind of life are into just songs, and it like deals with a lot of the attention span stuff that everyone deals with, you know, the changing of required attention span in our new world. So you can dig into that if you want. There's, you know, as long as there are people who are alive who experience like the album period of time, because, you know, albums weren't really a thing before the 50s or whatever.
Right.
So you've got that time period of that through, you know, 10 years ago or something.
Right.
Of that was the primary way that people were thinking about music. And people from that time period are going to be thinking about music that way. They're going to expect people to be putting out albums. They're going to listen to them that way, if they still have the attention span for it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's why I keep putting out albums.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was just a subject that I kind of ran across. I think I was reading an article or something, and they were kind of what they were trying to basically, they were trying to compare the digital era of like Spotify and whatever, Bandcamp and all this stuff to like the period you just referenced, Brooks, about like before the 50s when it was just singles being put out and stuff like that. And that we might be kind of going back to that time only in like a digital way. I don't know if that's true or whatever.
Well, it wasn't that long before that where there wasn't recorded music anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's like you're not really talking about anything very permanent. So I think I think we all just have to roll with it, whatever happens.
Yeah. My opinion is that it sucks. No, I'm just kidding. It does. Yeah, I will say though that when you have a thing where you have to, well, don't have to, but you review albums, it makes it kind of hard sometimes when you really like an artist and there's not that like one thing to latch on to. It's like a series of singles. But I also think like if they all came out near the same time, you could almost just think of them as a release. You know what I mean? But it's hard to tell people that succinctly, like, oh, listen to these 10 singles to get an idea. Or, you know what I mean? Like an album makes it a convenient sort of package.
Yeah, for sure. You know, where I stand on it is I like to meet it in the middle. I like EPs.
Oh yeah, EPs. I like 14-minute albums. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, there you go. Or that's basically what EPs have become lately.
Yeah. Well,
especially in the rap world.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, play like that Boy Zay. That was only 16 minutes long.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that that Boy Zay EP that we reviewed. I wonder if he considers it a full project.
I think it's called an album. I don't know. Okay.
Well, yeah, probably. Do you consider On Vacation an EP or a full album, or does it matter to you?
I think it's an EP.
Okay.
I haven't done a lot of EPs, but after I finished that one, it was so easy to listen to. Like 20 minutes is way less of a commitment than 45 minutes or an hour, which is all of my full lengths. So if you, I don't know, I found myself putting it on more because it was like, I can do this while I'm, driving across town and back, or I can, there's so many things that you can do. I'm going to do this while I prepare dinner or whatever. It's appealed to me a lot. So I think I probably will be doing more EPs in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just talking to Erik that I kind of went through most of your discography to kind of prepare for this interview. And that's one thing that I really, really enjoyed about On Vacation is that it just kind of, it flowed really well and it was kind of over within like 20 minutes. But then at the same time, probably my favorite release that I found in your discography is Benjamin, which I hadn't really committed to listening to previously. I always liked Acid Casual and My Foreign Right Hand and Misanthrope and stuff like that. So another question that I had for you actually is, and I could be maybe misinterpreting this a little bit, but it seems to me like you have some songs and albums that are more collaborative with other musicians, and then you have a lot of other things that is pretty much just you with the guitar. Do you write differently in each of those situations? Meaning, I guess, is there like when you are planning on, say, recording a song or an album with like a band or musicians backing you in the studio, do the songs kind of come spontaneously or change when the other musicians get involved? Or do you already kind of have like your plan of how the songs are going to kind of go, and you just sort of tell the musicians like, okay, this is what, I want you to play, this is what I wrote, or whatever. Is there different ways of how you kind of form songs in the studio that way?
I usually have people write their own parts
Oh,
with maybe some kind of loose direction if I have any, if they're willing to do that. It's kind of just if I've worked with people who are more performers than creative people, and they're like, well, what do you want me to play? And I'm like, play whatever you want. And they're like, I don't know how to play whatever I want. Like, tell me what to play. And so then those are usually the times when I end up doing something like that. But as far as the writing process, like I write most of my songs like by myself, and whether they're with somebody, with like other musicians or not, is kind of determined by what kind of song I just wrote. So it's like I can tell if I write a song, I want drums on this, like keys would sound good, like some of the stuff that I don't usually play myself. If I know I want those things on there, then I just start planning it as something that I'm gonna be recording with other musicians.
that's cool. I think that comes in through the recordings too. Like, like songs on Benjamin, for example. I can definitely tell that, like, whoever's playing those parts are kind of bringing their own sort of style and flavor to it.
That was a really fun one because I did it with just my brother and my friend Brad.
Sure.
And like we all kind of took different roles. They're both great drummers that I really love. They both are great keyboard players, who I love to hear play keys. Brad's one of my favorite guitar players. So just being able to see, like, I think I played all the bass parts on it, but everything else is like whoever I felt like would bring the best thing to that particular song. So like we split up keyboard parts equally. Like I split drum parts equally between Landon and Brad. So
sure,
that was really fun. It was a really neat process that way.
Yeah, it definitely sounded like it would have been a fun record. And I also hear Landon's, now that you mention it, I definitely hear Landon's influence on that a little bit too. So that's really cool.
So it's sort of along the same lines, when you are writing for a band that you're playing with, like Spectral Snake, or I really can't think of any other ones offhand.
Old Scratch revival singers.
When you're writing, do you fill the spaces of that song, plan them out, or do you purposely leave them open, or is it not really a consideration?
So I think with Old Scratch stuff, because it was always, it was an evolving band. We just knew what it was going to sound like in general, and everybody is in control of their own work. So you write a song that would make a good Old Scratch song, and it's like, okay, everybody can just play their stuff on here. As far as like the recording process, there's so much more to it than that. And for me, that process was usually like, okay, this is the list of 30 instruments that I want on this song. These are the ones that I can play. How do I find the people who can play these other things? Or do we already have somebody in the band that plays these things? And I don't know, sometimes like writing arrangements for like, for horn players or for string players or something, that's part of sort of the pre-production process or something between the writing process and the recording process. But
it's a multifaceted sort of songwriting situation because you are also arranging. So it's not just chords and melody or whatever and words, which obviously are pretty important to songs, but not the entire thing. So yeah, that's cool. How about in Spectral Snake?
Since the writing process is collaborative, like me and Angie split songwriting in it and write a lot of the stuff together and are always kind of like bouncing stuff off of each other as we're writing. Like they kind of form in a different way, and then it's just like reflect on this song and see what like which of Angie's instruments that she plays are going to be good on this on this song, and like which of the things I play are going to be good on this song, and like do I have an idea for what kind of bass I want on it, and can I play that bass, or do I want to play that bass? And like, if I don't have an idea for it, it's like, can I send this to Erik? Can I send this to somebody, who's bass playing?
Your second
ideas
choice.
I like.
I think Dan had some questions about that specific element too, like working with Angie on Spectral Snake.
I guess, is there like a prominent difference between writing with Angela and Spectral Snake and you writing your solo material, And I guess that pretty much just covered it.
Pretty much. Yeah.
There are some differences, and there are some songs, where I just wrote it all at once and was like, "Do you like this, Angie?" And she's like, "Yeah." And then it's, there's not really a difference in process there than my solo songs.
So when you write down a list of 30 instruments, have you ever successfully tracked down 30 different musicians to come in the studio at once?
Not at once.
No, not at once.
No, I do pretty much everything piece by piece. I
Right.
very rarely record multiple people at the same time.
So Brooks, how's the comic book thing been going? I know I've been seeing some stuff. I guess it's been a little while, but I know you were doing some Instagram comics and stuff like that.
I've been really enjoying illustration and comic storytelling and stuff. It was something that I did a lot of in high school and hadn't done any of since. And then when I didn't have any shows on the calendar, when the pandemic hit, it felt like a really good time to like dig back into something that I had abandoned for a long time, decades.
Sure. Yeah, I noticed that when the pandemic hit, I think it kind of brought a lot of independent comic creators out of their shell, because I noticed that at that time, more than any, on Instagram, all of a sudden, it was flooded with comic book artists who were selling their work. And so I've actually been just, it's kind of like rediscovering, of course, you and I both kind of got into comics, around the image boom of like the 90s. And it's kind of been cool. I've been sort of rediscovering a lot of like indie comics creators lately. And it kind of feels like that, only I'm like in my early 40s now. So it's really interesting. I think that that's kind of brought a lot of that out. And so is there any connection at all between like your music and comic books? Does one inspire the other, or is it just sort of two separate things that you do?
I think only in the writing of words. I think that's where things kind of overlap, and I'm able to use skills, like the same kinds of skills for both things.
Cool.
I think visually, there's not, like, it kind of felt like starting from the ground up when I started making, like, doing a lot more visual art. But like the writing process, a lot of the Spectral Snake songs are like kind of story songs or something. So like getting into storytelling and like, coming up with fictional situations and dialogue and stuff like that, I think was informed by songwriting that I had been working on previous to that. But the visual stuff feels new, and just that freshness really felt good. I hadn't realized like how burnt out on music I was until my calendar was clear, and I didn't have to pick up the guitar for any reason.
Yeah.
And I just sat back and I was like, oh shit, I was so burned out. This feels new, and like I need to do some new things and like feel a lot of the feelings that I felt when I was young that like drew me so deeply into music. And I've gotten a lot of that from making visual art.
Yeah. Now, when you say you're kind of comparing the dialogue and the writing of the words, would you say that the stories with your comic projects share any common themes with, say, like Spectral Snake's lyrics and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, especially like that Instagram comic that I was working on pretty hard for, quite a while. Taps into a lot of stuff that I talk about in songs. And like, I think there are similar vibes. But it's also like a good, like, I don't have any interest in writing songs about like fighting monsters, but I do have interest in drawing comics about fighting monsters.
Oh, sure.
So like, it's just stuff that feels appropriate for a different outlet,
Yeah.
I would love to hear some songs about you fighting monsters, though, just for the record. I mean, if you put them out, I would love them. Just say that.
You could put out an album, the entire thing's titled For Erik. It'll all be about you fighting.
I think they all have that dedication somewhere in the credits. Anyway, all of Brooks's records.
Thank you, Erik.
Yeah.
So are there any comic book artists or comic book titles that you've been delving into since kind of rediscovering this love for comic books?
Like new monthly stuff that I read is pretty much all just like X-Men stuff. For the last few years, I've been reading all the X-Men stuff. I don't remember when it was, 2019 or something, that Jonathan Hickman like kind of took over the X titles. And I read an article about that and knew his work a little bit from some other stuff and was like, that sounds like it's going to be pretty good. And I've just been following those since. So I like that stuff a lot. And then, I don't know, I read a lot of like older comics and, a lot of just the big like legendary works are super inspiring to me. I was recently reading Akira and it's super good, really like a fast and like super rewarding read.
Yeah, fantastic stuff.
Not to change the topic completely, but I will. Is there any like newer music? And I don't necessarily mean like new music, but like what you're into now. Have you been listening to much music lately?
Not a whole lot. I've been kind of listening to like Fugazi and Sonic Youth as like my recent like go-tos, which is stuff I was really into in high school and haven't listened to a lot since. So that's been like pretty fun.
Is there any particular albums that you're really into?
So what have I listened to recently? I listened to Red Medicine, which is like, that was the one that I listened to the most, I think, in high school.
Yep.
And it was really fun. And, I have so much more context for things now. So it's like the listening experience is totally different than it was then. And like, that's really fun. Especially with stuff where, there's like a little voice in the back of your head, like kind of singing along and being like, oh yeah, that part. And like the whole like front, like present part of your mind is like, oh wow, I see what they're doing there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, because I've been kind of going back and rediscovering a bunch of bands, when I was in high school, and Fugazi definitely falls in that camp a little bit. And the one record that I've really been into for some reason is End Hits. Love that record for some reason. I mean, I like all of them. They're all so good.
Yeah.
I need to get into Fugazi. I've been meaning to for about 30 years.
Well,
I just haven't really committed. I don't know.
That's another thing that's been happening is Erik and I have had conversations about this on the podcast, actually, is we've been, well, I don't know about you, Erik, but I know that I've been getting into bands that I'm like, geez, why wasn't I into this band when I was like 16? You know what I mean? And I'm like, this is awesome. Well, what was I waiting for? Stuff like that. That's been happening.
Somebody sent me an NRBQ song the other day. And I was like, oh, I love this. I've been meaning to get into these guys for like a really long time. I think I've read like a whole bunch of articles about them and just never listened to them.
Yeah, that's one band I've definitely heard their name being thrown around.
Do Me and the Boys? Is that a song by them?
I don't know.
I feel like it is. And I would only know that from the movie Shakes the Clown, which if you haven't seen Shakes the Clown, everyone, you probably should, because it's terrible.
Yeah, you were telling me about that at least a couple episodes back. Shakes the Clown.
Again, it's something I try to bring up every every
Day?
conversation that I have, actually. It's like, this has been nice and all, but have you seen Shakes the Clown? I'm like a missionary for it.
Erik, do you have any questions for Brooks?
Yeah, sure. Sure I do. So back. We're going in the Wayback Machine. Here we go. What was your start in music?
I can't remember. No, I think the very first thing I did was making music with Dan.
Wow.
Yeah, that probably would have been true.
So I think maybe the very first thing, I'm not sure. One of the first things for sure is my dad had a guitar sitting in his closet, and I always knew it was there. And I'd look at it sometimes, be like, that's a guitar. That's cool. And I kind of started getting into music. And one day I took it out and I just sat it on my lap and started like hitting one string at a time with one finger and writing songs.
Nice.
And like I wrote a few songs that way. And it was probably right around the time when Dan had started playing guitar and and I got a guitar of my own shortly after that.
Yeah, I do remember. I don't remember what it was called, Brooks, but we had this thing. I think you had like some sort of karaoke thing with a cassette player that you were able to record.
That's how I recorded all my stuff for the first few years of playing.
Cool.
And I think we would just sit in your garage and I would play guitar and you would sing.
Miser.
And we just did these songs. Was that what it was called? Was Miser? And I do remember there was a song that we had called Psychedelic. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Bad music.
Yeah. It was like literally like I played 4 out of the probably the most out of tuned guitar you've probably ever heard. And then I remember the lyrics were psychedelic sucks, goats, ducks.
Wow.
Is that accurate, Brooks?
Yeah, that is accurate.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember all of my first lyrics fit on like a little tiny piece of paper, like written really big on it. Like there were only like between 4 and 10 words to like the first 20 songs I wrote or something.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, that would have been around the time that we were probably just starting to get into like Nirvana and Smashing Pumpkins and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Maybe even I'm sure Green Day was probably around by then too.
And something I said to Erik the other day is when I first started writing lyrics, I had been listening to like Nirvana and Smashing Pumpkins and Sonic Youth and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, none of this shit makes any sense. This is all just nonsense. Like they just put a bunch of words together that don't make any sense together. That's how you write words. And so for like years, I was just like, okay, that's how you write words to songs. It's like, it doesn't mean anything at all. And there's no way to get any meaning out of it. Completely meaningless bullshit.
Yeah.
And it's okay. Like if the music is good and there's like good sounds happening, that can be listenable.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just makes something not great worse, which is unfortunate. But I try to put meaning in my songs now for the last couple decades.
Yeah.
It's an honorable pursuit. I haven't gone there, but that's okay. It takes all kinds, right? So after you and Dan got together, like what was the next step? Like starting a band, or was your brother into music at the time?
The same time I got my guitar, Landon got a drum set. So we would play at the house a lot. When I got to high school, I met Grant Jackson and he had a guitar. And it's like, oh, we both play guitars. And then it was just about anybody we knew that had instruments that could be plugged in, like trying to play music, in the garage or whatever, as much as we could. It's like, oh, do you know how to play any Rage Against the Machine songs? Yeah. Will you show me? Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah. So you had a few bands during that time then, or just kind of rotating thing?
So it was mostly Septic,
Mm-hmm.
my high school band. You were in that for the first part, I think.
I was in it for a little bit, and rightly so. You guys kicked me out, but you got a way better bass player, and that was Bill Mooney.
That was probably the prompt.
I recognize
this guy's a really good bass player.
I totally recognize it now, but at the time I was like pissed. But you know, that's 16 years old.
I was really like all about dick moves when I was in high school.
Yeah,
like
talking about the dick moves.
I mean, high school and for many years after, I guess, but it was just like,
you know what we all were, Brooks. Do you remember when the internet before social media and all that stuff?
I remember the internet.
Yeah, I remember the internet.
Yeah, you remember the internet. Do you remember when there were those message boards where you could just like make like an anonymous bullshit name or whatever?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And there was like one about the Muscatine scene, and I'll just reveal this to you now.
Oh shit.
This is pretty funny, but do you remember when there was like some guy with an anonymous name that kept shit talking Septic?
Oh man.
Do you want to know who that was?
Was it you?
No, not at all. I think it was Erik.
I didn't listen to Septic. What the fuck?
You did. They were there was that show at Gabe's.
And I did. I really was impressed by your voice. I remember it was like, I didn't quite even know how you were doing it.
Yeah, I remember you telling me when you sing, it sounds like two people singing.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah,
it was a really nice compliment.
So after the garage, then see, this is why earlier I was like, it's solo artist or solo work is sort of a funny nomenclature because it implies that you were part of something else and you branched out or broke off or something. But you were doing your own stuff way early.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the very beginning, I started doing solo stuff. Septic started as a solo project. I made like 20 full-length albums or something in my bedroom that nobody ever heard.
There was Super Cool. I remember that.
Yeah, that was one of the only ones that got released. Released. You know, people heard it.
Yeah.
I gave it to 12 people or something is what that means. But yeah, like my first solo show, I think, was at the d.i.y. And then I don't think I played solo very much other than that, like in Muscatine. But then, I don't know, like after high school, when I started going to Marshalltown and Waverly and like, you know, all the punk rock meccas in Iowa, going to like screamo shows in Des Moines and stuff, I would play solo shows at some of those. And it was kind of just like because my band after high school was Marvin's Hour of Power, which was a like pop punk band. And like, you know, if we couldn't do a show, I would just play like a solo set there.
Nice. But that sort of directly led to you working with people that you would be in another band with.
Yeah, I met Ben Driscoll, I think at one of those shows or something. Like the girlfriend of one of the guys in Marvin's Hour of Power was like, I've got this friend from my hometown, Ben Driscoll, you should meet him. And I met him and like we played each other some songs and it was like, oh shit, like this is somebody doing what I do. And it was the first time either one of us had like really met somebody, you know, who would write songs on an acoustic guitar and be able to sing them and stuff, you know. That was just like a different thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we started a project together that started as just the two of us recording stuff like at each other's homes and stuff. And then after our CD came out, or like before our CD came out, I guess, because I think there's credits for the first live band in the original CD, but we put together a live band and started playing some of those songs. And then when we heard that Eric Whitaker wanted to play bass for us, we kicked our bass player.
That is not true. That is absolutely not how it worked out. It is how it worked out, but that's not how it happened. No, I saw that Heart Attacks, John the Punk's 40th birthday party. and our friend Jason Salick and I went to that, and I had never heard him, and I didn't really know the people in the band. I knew Brooks, but so yeah, no, I saw him play, and I told Jason on the way home, I was like, I'm gonna play in that band somehow, some way. And then not much later, I don't know, Jason was on the phone, I guess, with probably Brooks, and was like, the bass player just quit or whatever. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be in the band then, or something like that. That's how I remember it. I don't know.
No, I think it was like Erik wants to play something.
Well, I'm sorry, I had no idea.
Well,
That's how it worked out.
It's fun. I mean, it's bad. It's like it's back to that like dick moves kind of time period, you know? It was just like, oh, can we get somebody different that we want for some other reason? Okay.
You know what I just realized? All your dick moves are against bass players. You hate bass players.
It's true. And I became a bass player because of how much I hate them.
There's only one way to get rid of all these bass players. So I have to do it my goddamn self. All right. So after I caused the big breakup, and then it was the heart attacks. Yeah.
Yeah. That was the first tour, 2003, 20 years ago.
Yeah. And nothing really to talk about. It went perfect, smoothly. Everyone got along really.
I don't have any stories from
super successful shows. We all had like enough money and support to.
We all came home with thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I mean, it was the beginning of the beginning. Right?
Yeah.
It was like, oh shit, we could probably be millionaires if we keep this up. I think that's how it was. And since we just had such a great time, I think we were kind of like, maybe we should have a different band.
So did the heart attacks, like, did that directly evolve into Old Scratch Revival?
So the real story is that we went on that tour. All four of the people in the band had a really bad time. 2 days before the end of tour, we were in Dallas, Texas, and we were supposed to have a day off after Dallas and then play some show in Columbia, Missouri, I think, somewhere in Missouri. And the Dallas show was horrible. And just the experience of killing time in Dallas was horrible. And I was legit losing my mind. And I like went and talked to Ben. And I was like, Ben, I'm quitting this band. I have to quit. And he's like, okay. And then I went and told Erik, I just quit the band. And Erik's eyes lit up. He was like, really? I was like, yeah, it feels really good. He's like, I'm going to quit the band too.
Yeah, I'm going to try that.
We should tell Nick. And so we went up and the two of us told Nick that we had just quit the band. And Nick was like, that's a pretty good idea.
So you all three quit the band.
We all quit the band, decided not to play the last show and just to drive home. It was like a 12-hour drive. It was a really long drive getting home. We had a second wing of the tour booked going out east and didn't do it. So Ben went on that half of the tour by himself, I think. Or maybe had like a couple other people filling in. So I don't know exactly what happened there, but that was kind of the process of Ben starting All Rattle and Dust. But I think the day after you guys got back, Erik was trying to think of like what to do next. He picked one of my Heart Attack songs and started a new band.
With Brooks's song, yeah. But,
and was like, Nick, do you want to start this new band and play this song? Recorded one of my Heart Attack songs that we had stopped playing, showed me. I was like, this is awesome. This sounds great. And then he was like, do you want to play banjo? So I became the banjo player, like in like the first week, of the band existing.
Yeah, I think we had basically like Sing My Funeral Song from Brooks, and I had a song called Patience of Job. And I think those were sort of like the parameters that we were
I think the door was pretty early too.
Yeah. So it was seamless. It was just like, well, what do we do now? And it was like, well, we'll just do this. And and the Heart Attacks had already started to go down a sort of roots rock road anyway. And so I think it was just a natural thing to,
like Ben would like reject a lot of my songs that were like folkier songs.
Yeah.
And just for the record, we're not shit talking on Ben right now. We're all good friends and we all work together, and everyone realizes that was just a different point in time or whatever,
Yeah.
So, but that is how it worked out.
So Brooks, was it around this time that you came out with your first like proper solo album?
I started recording it the same time, and it was mostly like it started out being made up of the rejected Heart Attack songs. Yeah, I started recording that album then, and it took a couple years. It took a few years. It came out in 2007, and I think it was probably 2003 when I started it.
So were there ever any ideas of like some of those songs turning into old scratch songs eventually, or were you kind of like, okay, I'm going to do this old scratch thing, but I'm also going to do my solo stuff at the same time?
Erik had such a strong aesthetic concept for old scratch.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I could tell as soon as I started working on something, whether it was an old scratch song or something I was going to put on my solo record.
Yeah. So when you started performing live as a solo act, were you a little, because you mentioned that you played like your first show, what was it, back in high school? And then you didn't really perform solo since then. So,
it was before that. When Marvin's Hour Power was playing, I would play some solo shows here and there. I always just kind of had a little stable of solo songs that I would do. And then the outlet for that became the Heart Attacks when I started making music with Ben. So it was kind of just like there was suddenly like an outlet for those songs that I had been just treating as solo songs to just kind of have in my back pocket if I needed to play a show by myself.
Got you. So did you ever have any, was there ever any like nervousness about playing solo from your end or anything? Since, you were kind of used to playing with other people?
Not really.
Not really?
I think I was probably nervous at that very first show when I was in high school and played at the old Y. I'm sure I was a little nervous then. I remember the first Septic show being very nervous, but like I didn't have a lot of like stage fright.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much social anxiety I had. Like I didn't realize it enough for it to actually affect playing live. I didn't really associate the emotional kind of anxiety stuff with that. It was like, oh, you write songs, you go and you play in front of people. And after getting over it at the very first show, it was like, yeah, you just go up and you play your songs.
Sure.
I felt like I was bad at it. I felt like my songs were pretty good, but like I was pretty bad at playing solo up until not that long ago, probably like the last 10 years or so. I've felt like I'm pretty competent at playing solo shows.
Yeah.
But
speaking of which, I got to see Brooks play the other night, and it was awesome. He did music from, I would think, Wasteland Blues he played. So all the way back from the first solo record.
First song on that first record.
Yeah. BS Guarantee too. Yeah. It was awesome. It was awesome to hear everything sort of like compiled. It was like a live collection. It was super sweet. So is that how you've been approaching solo shows for like the last while, or do you usually try to focus on the most current stuff?
It's kind of whatever I feel like. I usually feel like playing newer stuff. And like for the 2 or 3 years before Benjamin came out, I was playing almost exclusively Benjamin stuff at all the shows. And I've pretty much only rarely played any of the songs on it since then, I mean, I guess I have only played a few shows since then because it came out during the pandemic. But like the last few shows, I've just kind of done what feels right. And a lot of it is newer material usually.
I was just going to say my favorite track on Vacation is As We Do. I really, really like that one a lot, Brooks. And I won't even ask you like or tell you what I think it might what the lyrics might mean or whatever. But could you talk about that a little bit? Because I really like the lyrics to that one. It sounds like you're sort of like maybe rediscovering a friendship or something, but I don't know. Maybe that's just because that is the word friendship is in the lyrics. So I don't know. I just really, really like it. And I also like the way you did your vocals on that. It almost creates this atmospheric, like, I don't know how, maybe you could talk a little bit about that too. Like it almost creates almost a shoegazy effect to the song from my perspective. Like it's just really, I don't know. I really like that one a lot, Brooks.
Cool. Yeah. Well, almost the whole record was written while I was on vacation. Like that's one of the songs that I wrote and recorded in Portland, Oregon during my honeymoon. Cool. And we were staying with an old friend of me and Angie's, one of our best friends, and just kind of spending every day with her and her partner, who we hadn't spent very much time with before. So just like becoming friends with him and spending like good quality time with our friend Anna, who lives out there. And so that song was just a reflection of what we had done that day. I should give a little background to why I was recording songs while I was on my honeymoon. So in the month of June last year, we made a deal with a couple friends of ours to record something every day and put it in a little folder with our name on it. And so all four of us friends had our own little folder that we were putting songs in every single day. And so it started out like the rules were like, it can just be like a field recording of you walking around or a neat bird that you saw or something. But then people were doing these like really elaborate, like well-recorded songs and spending like their entire day doing it. And so everybody just started like I don't want to look like a clown, next to all this stuff. Like I better really bring it. And so like everybody wrote just like a bunch of like really good songs. And so like I was spending, half of the day processing whatever happened in the other half of the day during that trip. And that was kind of where that song came from. Like we went to this old, like bombed out, I mean, I guess not literally bombed out, but like ruins of an old fort that, you could go through. You could walk through all these rooms. It all it was really echoey and like just like these beautiful structures where, people were doing a bunch of stuff in there, but all of the stuff had been stripped out. So it was just these rooms and these structures. And so we explored around there and like yelled and played, and we went to the water. Like we went to some different places around Portland and just had a fun time, like laughing with friends. And it's like, that's what I had done,
Wow.
So like, that's what I wrote about.
So these lyrics are literally just about a day that you had with old and new friends. Like literally.
Exactly.
That's wow. So that's awesome though.
Yeah. That song every day, like practice was really, really neat for just like processing the happenings of the day. Like you never are forced to reflect in that way. I guess people who keep a diary, have the same kind of experience. Right. But because we were having to show it to somebody else, it's like you had to try a lot harder than you would probably try in your diary.
Right. Right. Yeah, no,
Sorry, someone proofreading their diaries. Really a funny concept.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. You clarified that because I don't know. There was something about that song that just kind of like what you were saying in the words, like, I don't know, it clicked. So I guess I just really related to it,
So some of that recording is actually from from that day. I did re-record a lot of the instruments and kind of elaborated on the arrangements, especially on the stuff that I was doing on the road, because I had a guitar and like a couple other little things. So a lot of the good sounding engineering happened at home. Like after I got home and decided I wanted to put it on a record, like I had to go in and replace a lot of stuff where it was like, oh, this was obviously recorded in a bedroom after everybody was asleep. Like, but that also, you know, some of that quietness and like gentleness of those songs is because I was like working on stuff into the night after people had gone to bed.
Yeah. Nice.
And I wanted to preserve that. So
I also just like the idea that you're actually writing about, like, the name of the record is On Vacation, and you're actually writing about being on vacation. Like,
so that album cover is just like a spontaneous picture taken in a garden on that Portland trip. Angie was taking a picture and I like reached my hand out to her and she reached her hand out while she was taking the picture.
But it's very pretty. It looks like some kind of English garden, and you can clearly see Angie's ring, which is why you were traveling, right? And that's really cool. But Brooks pointed out to me, and I don't know if it got cropped or not, but in the background there's like moving truck or something. Like it's kind of just off the street, but it really looks like I see it. I got it pulled up here.
It's
cool. It's a cool kind of dichotomy in the picture itself. Well, Dan, what do you think? Do you have other questions for our guest, Brooks?
You know, honestly, I think I've kind of gone through pretty much my list, but
no, I was going to ask about maybe some influences and stuff, but you know, if you feel like talking about that, then you can, but I don't know.
What can you ask anything more specific about that?
Well, honestly, my real question was the stuff that influenced you to write when you were starting out, have those stayed consistent, or they've been replaced, or just new influences added? I guess the relationship between your early influences versus now, have they stayed the same or changed or what?
So there's, when I very first started, it's like that stuff we were talking about of like, oh, it just has to be nonsense. You just string a bunch of words together, and if you like saying them next to each other, that's the song. That lasted, you know, for a few years, and then I started listening to Paul Simon, and then like I got into Leonard Cohen and Bright Eyes and Alkaline Trio even, and like a bunch of stuff where it was like, oh, this is like clever. You can actually be like clever and be saying something, make somebody feel something, and like impress them with your cleverness. Like, this is what I want to do. Like, this is so much better. And I am still trying to be clever, you know, like that kind of just stuck. And a lot of that stuff is still an influence, you know, like when I got into Bob Dylan, like I was, I don't know, 21 or something, 20 maybe. And like that's stuck. I don't think I've ever like lost that influence. I've found more people along the way that kind of like fall into those categories for me, like Randy Newman or Tom Waits, or like later on like Kate Bush and Joanna Newsom. But like that's kind of been the like at the heart of a lot of what I consider my influences as far as songwriting. Sounds wise, it's been just kind of all over the place. It's always just like what's coming out of the instruments I'm messing around with, and like what is stuff that I've heard before and liked. And it's kind of all just going into a big churning bucket.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool if you can
pull out what I need.
Kind of retain those early influences still, though, because being able to just write some bullshit is also a very useful tool. Like if you kind of paint yourself into a corner with cleverness, you can kind of get out of it with some bullshit, and vice versa. You know, like if you have a clever chorus, you can say anything in the verse. You know,
I'm like super like concerned with craft for like the last few years, especially, of just like trying to look at every line and say, like, I'm going to have to sing this probably 5 or 10 years from now, maybe longer.
Mm-hmm.
And like, is this something I'm going to be able to stand behind? Like, does this make enough sense? Is this, will this stand up to scrutiny? And it's like, that's not a concern you have when you're young, but like,
for sure,
definitely has been increasingly a concern of mine, songwriting wise. Also, like getting into more classic stuff and like Great American Songbook, like the old like writers who like could say something so eloquently and so simply. That's something that I'm like occasionally striving for, like for the last 5 to 10 years or something. I'm just like, oh, can I do that? Can I like make this incredibly beautiful and seem effortless and, feel simple, but like contain everything? Like, is that possible? And kind of always reaching for that.
Yeah. So that level of craft that you're striving for, have you ever felt impeded by that at all? Have like writer's block or whatever, or like stopping yourself from putting things out because you don't think they're good enough?
I kind of know as I'm writing something if it's salvageable or not. And there are songs that don't make it anywhere. I can usually go back to them and figure out how it was salvageable, like what was wrong with it at the time. And sometimes I'll do that and like fix it, spend maybe like even spend some time like fixing something that I had written most of 4 or 5 years ago or something.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it is like there's a solution to it, you just have to put the time into it. And if it's something that's going to take a lot of time, you might have to put that on the back burner while you take care of this stuff that's coming more easily.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Brooks, do you have a preference of playing live versus making records? Just out of curiosity.
Oh yeah. I really, really like making records, and I usually feel at least a little uncomfortable playing live.
Yeah.
As I've gotten better at playing live, like I can get into it more, and I can, while I'm practicing for something, like feel excited about the set list I put together, feel excited about like how my voice is sounding. But a lot of times you get to the show and can't do that thing you were practicing, and then it's just like another disappointment on top of feeling anxious and feeling like, oh, I don't know what to say to all these people, like all that stuff. So
you ever have the same experience also, Brooks, with recording, like where, I don't know, maybe you did a demo and there's something in that demo that was so awesome and you're like, I'm going to try and recreate that for the actual recording of the same song, but for some reason it just doesn't work out and you have to figure out a different way to do it, and it kind of frustrates you?
I don't really get frustrated by that. I get kind of excited by that. It definitely happens. It happens a lot. Anytime you're demoing things, it's like, oh, I'm losing this. But then it's like, well, how do I gain something else? If I can't make this have the same like magic and feel as it did before, like whatever this instrument is or this part, like I can't capture that, but what can I put in there that's going to like add a different kind of magic that's going to like bring it back up to that level?
Sure.
So it's like problem solving, and I don't know, I think it's exciting and fun.
Yep.
From a production and arrangement standpoint.
When it comes to production, arrangement, and recording and stuff like that, do you feel that it is sort of like, I don't know the right word, an exercise, but like, I'm just going to say the word I'm thinking of, like a game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, like when I record stuff, it's very much like a video game. Like not a video game, but just like making the sound, adding the effects I want, like getting it to sound like I want. Like, is that sort of like hobby-ish to you? Does that make any sense?
Yeah. And I think, there is a lot of craft to it, and it's a lot of like, oh, what does this remind me of? Like, do I lean into that? Do I make it sound more like that thing, or do I make it sound less like that thing? Like, which other direction can I take it if I want it to sound less like that? Like, like this would sound really cool if like the banjo sounded like it was recorded in a cave. Let's figure out how to do that. Yeah, that sounds adequately cave-like. Like just
right.
Like you are playing a game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cave banjo.
Cave banjo.
Wow.
Well,
guys,
thanks for listening, everybody. And please contact us.
Yeah, and also check out Brooks as a person, but also his music is all on Bandcamp. He is playing shows. I don't think this is going to air in time for anyone to know about the show in Davenport. But,
is that the only show you got coming up, Brooks?
Yeah. What else you got coming up?
That's it for right now.
Spectral Snake. What's going on with that?
Just sent the artwork off for the full length.
Sweet.
To the label yesterday, so it should be out fairly soon.
Awesome.
Nice.
Are we gonna get a vinyl release of that or anything, or is it just gonna be digital?
We really wanted to do vinyl, but I think it's just gonna be a tape release.
Nice.
Awesome.
At least for now. If we get some sort of big funding boost, I would love to see it on vinyl. But
is there a time frame that we can kind of expect that?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
However long the pressing plant takes, it'll be a little more than that.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Check out Brooks, and thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
And Brooks is literally here. He's in my basement. It's the first time anyone on this show has been in the same room.
Oh,
it's kind of a big deal.
So that's the situation. You got a basement.
I'm doing pretty well. I got two fucking levels.
Got all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, you want to see all this shit?
On the level. Levels. Yeah.
None of this shit makes any sense. This is all just nonsense.